How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of Perfect Reload Weekly, where we recap all that's happened in the world of video games for the past week, and I am joined, as always, by Christian Slater.
Welcome to Videodrome.
Honestly, it feels like I live in Videodrome with you. First off, I want to apologize for taking last week off. That was certainly not my intention. The show was primed, ready to go. So what happened? I don't know if it's been long enough that I can laugh about it yet, because I'm still feeling the effects of it, but it is a somewhat silly thing, because I'm sure this is something that plenty of people have dealt with in their lives. But last Sunday morning, I woke up very early. My dog got me up. He needed to go out. So I get out of bed, I open the door, I let him out, and probably 10 seconds, 15 seconds later, he is running around like crazy, dives back into the house. I cannot figure out what's going on with him, and he is running all over the house. I don't have my glasses on at this point, so I put my glasses on so I can see, and his face is totally wet, and he got sprayed in the mouth and eyes by a skunk. I did not know that that's what had happened at the time, because there was no smell. It didn't smell bad. And so he jumped all over the furniture, my bed, everything. I was trying to wrangle him, get him back in line. I finally figured out what had happened. I got him into the bath, got him all washed. He's okay now, but the house smells horrible. I mean, horrible, to the point where I was gagging trying to just sit in my living room. So I have spent a few $100s at this point trying to get everything clean. I had to throw away sheets, pillows, clothing, blankets, the whole deal. I had to wash my whole couch multiple times. I had to buy some very expensive skunk removal smell stuff and spray that everywhere. I've already gone through an entire bottle of it. I had to get another bottle delivered. It actually got delivered today. We're almost I'm filming this on Saturday. This happened last Sunday, so we're 6 days out, and it is rough. He smells fine. He very, very slight lingering smell around just his lips where he got sprayed. But everything smells really bad. And the reason why I couldn't film this is because it happened even though we are on the moon. Let's pretend for a second that we're not actually on the moon, and I am in a normal house. 3 feet to my right is where it happened. So my entire office area has smelled horribly like skunk, and I could not stand to be back here to do it, let alone I work from home, so I've been smelling it all week, and it's been absolutely great. But it's getting a little bit better. Right now it smells very bad as I sit here, but it is to the point where it is at least tolerable that I can get through this, because I really wanted to do last week's episode. We had one of the best Nintendo Directs of recent memory. I posted some brief thoughts in the community tab on the channel. If you want to check that out, I thought it was an E3 level presentation. I really, really enjoyed what they did. I thought it was a great offering of games, wide variety, some pretty cool stuff. But I guess we'll now that the skunk stuff is out of the way, we'll jump into what I've been playing lately.
Well, time to get canceled.
Yeah, so I have been playing Hogwarts Legacy. I have very much been looking forward to this game. I'm a very big Harry Potter fan. I read the first book a little bit when it came out. Was it the 90s at this point? I was in elementary school when it came out, but I didn't keep up with it. I did watch all the movies, though, and I have since gone back and I have read the books, and I really do enjoy it. And I know, obviously, the game is getting boycotted due to J.K. Rowling being a piece of shit and having transphobic beliefs. I believe, I haven't dug super deep into this. I live in America, not in the UK, so it's not necessarily super big news over here, but I believe she is funding some transphobic political policies, maybe. At this point, it's a foregone conclusion she's a piece of shit. It's pretty simple at that point, and I know that people have been targeted for playing this game. There was that whole website made that had people on a list if you were streaming the game, so people could ignore your stream or even, send you some death threats on Twitter and all that stuff. And this is all I have to say about that before I talk about the game. It is 100% okay to not play this game because you disagree with J.K. Rowling's beliefs. It's 100% okay to play this game if you disagree with her beliefs. What's not okay is to send death threats and harass people for playing this game, because how would you like it if the tables were turned and people were sending you death threats because you were playing a game that maybe they didn't agree with somebody that made that game. Because let's be honest, there are a lot of people in the video game industry that are horrible, horrible people, and their games still get covered just fine. There aren't widespread boycotts. It's just the society we live in. It's unfortunate, but the team that made this game did a wonderful job, and they have quite a bit of inclusion in the game, including a trans character. And I think it's one of those things where it's okay to enjoy the game, and it's also okay to not want to play the game because of how it makes you feel due to the beliefs of the person responsible for creating the world that the game takes place in. Both are valid points, and nobody can say otherwise. Those are your feelings, So that being said, out of the way, let's get into Hogwarts Legacy, because it is all that I have been playing for since it came out. I got it the day that it came out. It's obviously based upon the world created in Harry Potter, but it is not. It takes place well over 100 years before the Harry Potter stuff took place. So you're not seeing, there's no Daniel Radcliffe. There's Harry Potter's not there. Dumbledore's not there. Hagrid's not there. None of that stuff. I mean, as I've played the game, there are descendants, or at least I guess you would presume that they are descendants because they share the same last name. But the Harry Potter cast and crew that you would be familiar with from the books and movies are, they're not there.
I actually auditioned for Harry Potter.
You absolutely did not audition for Harry Potter because they only chose people that were from the United Kingdom.
I put on a fake accent and I read from Sean Connery's book of dirty limericks.
Great. That's wonderful. Fantastic. I've played a lot of this game. I've 10 to 12 hours in at this point. There's an in-game counter that is like wildly inaccurate, and also the PlayStation 5 hour count that does that for every game that you play is inaccurate as well. It says I've only played the game for 1 hour, and I played it much longer than that. I'm really enjoying it. I figured I would like it because I like Harry Potter and I like open world games, and I like games that have a leveling up system, an RPG element and all that. I did not expect to like it this much. This is one of the best games I have played in quite some time. I would say that this is probably the game I have enjoyed the most since Spider-Man came out on the PS4. It's just right up my alley with the way it plays. There are downsides to the way it plays. I think maybe the broom handling while you're flying could be a little bit better. The spell system, I think, could be handled a little bit better. So every attack is done with the right trigger. I don't know if that's necessarily the best choice. I think I would have preferred the face buttons. And you can only have 4 spells at a time. But you can get pages, and you can switch pages on the fly. So the way I have it is I have sort of like technical spells, like to illuminate things, to move objects. That's on one page. I have another page that will manipulate enemies, so lift them up, push them back, pull them forward, that kind of thing. And then I have another page that's, offensive maneuvers. And that's working out pretty well. You get used to it. It's still clunky, but you do get used to it. I think that the lip sync issue that people were seeing in the trailers, you honestly don't notice it that much unless you're really kind of looking for it. It's there. That's not to say that they didn't fix it. Characters do kind of look a little weird while they're speaking. But it's a very easy thing to overlook. It doesn't really break immersion or anything like that. So trying to think of other negatives before I get into the positives. A lot of repetitive dialogue. Your character has kind of an inner monologue that you hear, and he says the same stuff kind of every time he goes into a different town. It doesn't really cycle through different things. He kind of just, it's just the same line of dialogue. So it gets a little old. Everybody talks a lot, but it's honestly not that bad. People, you're walking through a crowded school or a crowded town. You would kind of expect that people are talking quite a bit, and there's a lot of dialogue. There are instances where, man, you have a lot of subtitles on that screen. If you have subtitles turned on, you're not quite sure, who's saying what. But I think it's fine. Those are things that you can get past. In terms of positives, boy, I honestly don't know where to start. I think the game looks incredible. I think the architecture and just general design of the game, it's a game that takes place in a magical world. They're not bound by physics or things that make sense. I think some of the like hidden room type stuff looks incredibly detailed. It's really, really nice looking. The game offers 5 or 6 different modes on the PS5. You kind of have your 60 frames a second, 30 frames a second with ray tracing, the kind of the balance between the two, all that stuff. And then you have 2 modes that are exclusive to certain televisions. I don't know what the television prerequisites would be aside from having a 120 hertz television. One of which is a 120 hertz mode. It bumps the game down to 1080p instead of 4K, and you're not getting 120 frames a second. I think online, I saw that it was like between like 70 and 80. It's very smooth. It's very nice. And then the other mode that is TV exclusive, and again, I don't know what exactly constitutes this, is a 40 frames a second mode that has a little bit nicer visuals. It is still 1080p, and that's what I'm playing on. So despite having a television that can do 120 hertz, despite having a television that can do 4K, I decided I'm going to do the balance. It's called balanced mode, and that is really nice. I tried the ray tracing mode just to see what it would look like. It says 30 frames a second. It is most definitely not 30 frames a second. I would say maybe 25 at best. And the ray tracing, there was a patch yesterday, and I haven't played with the ray tracing since the patch, so maybe it's fixed. But there was ray tracing on objects that shouldn't have ray tracing, like real-time reflections. Like there was like reflections off wood. Like wood doesn't reflect. You can't see. You can see. Light shining through into a puddle of water. You cannot see light shining through onto a wooden step and make it look like a puddle of water. Like that's, very, very, that really takes you out when you're running by that. Like it made everything kind of shiny, made everything look like it kind of had like Vaseline out over it. It was very strange. So I'm happy with the way I'm playing it. I think it's got a good variety of quests so far. Obviously it has your standard fetch quests, your standard go beat up a bunch of enemies and clear out this encampment kind of thing. There are puzzle quests that you can do. And the puzzle quests, that's my main gripe right now with the game, is that you are limited to how much gear you can hold. And gear is constituted by glasses, hats, clothes, hats, gloves, clothes, robes, and neck wear, so like a scarf. You can only have so many of those. Excuse me. You can only have so many of those. You unlock more slots by completing these puzzles in the world. You get way, way, way too much gear to you cannot keep up, because every time you unlock more slots, you're only unlocking 2 more slots. This game either should have had unlimited gear slots from the beginning. There really isn't a reason to not have unlimited gear slots. You're only allowed to have 1 item per gear category. That or completing the puzzles unlocked like 5 slots, not just 2. So that's like a big thing. You're forced to like destroy items mid-mission to make room for what could potentially be a better item, but you don't know if it's a better item because it just says when you go to unlock the treasure chest or whatever, it just says, hey, your gear is full. You need to sell items. So you can destroy one, but you are potentially destroying a good item to get a less good item in return. You have no idea. So that sucks. Other good things is the character customization, very robust, a lot of hairstyles. You can have a male presenting body with a female voice and vice versa. So a lot of options there. You can pitch the voice up and down, so you can really customize that. One of the things I like the most is if you have an item of clothing that you really like, but you just maybe don't like the way it looks, you can equip it, but make it look like a different piece of clothing that you have unlocked. I love that. Every game that has a system like this should have that. There is no reason why. And you can take them off. I'm wearing, my character is currently wearing a hat and glasses, but visually you cannot see the hat and glasses. And I like that. I just think that's a really nice quality of life function of a game that should be standard in any game that has a system like this. I I just really am enjoying the game. I have a coworker who's playing the game, so he and I have been able to chat a little bit about it. We're a little bit different spots. I think I've played maybe a little bit more of the main story than he has. So we're not quite in the same spot, but it's nice to be able to talk to somebody that's playing the games. He's the only other person I know that's playing it. I'm really, really enjoying my time. I mean, it's February. Obviously, this is the first, big new game of the year that I've played. But I unless the game totally falls apart, I do not see why this game is not a contender at the end of the year for my game of the year. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic. All right. Moving on beyond that, we have been doing our kind of weekly recap of The Last of Us. I thought last week's episode was great. Although since I am filming this before, it's 2 weeks episode ago for you, the Henry storyline. I totally forgot of that part of the game. That part of the game just flew right over my head. It's been a little while since I played that game, a few years. I played it obviously when it came out, and then I played it again 2019, something like that. Or maybe I actually played it after Last of Us Part 2 came out. I can't remember. I may have played it in 2020 or 2021. But I just have no recollection of that part of the game at all. So that was cool. Great episode of the show. Really looking forward to it. We're winding down. I think only a few weeks left before the season is done. And they've said that season 2 is not a continuation of the first game. It is Last of Us Part 2. So we'll see how they wrap everything up. Before I finish up with what I've been playing, pick a purchase, I guess you will. I have been in the market for another Xbox controller, and Xbox happened to release this. This is the Stellar Shift controller. It's got some stuff on the grip. I don't know if you can really see it on the camera, but this came out. I needed a new Xbox controller because I only had one, and it's slightly annoying to just move it from upstairs to downstairs, from the console to the PC. So it was nice to have another one. I really enjoy it. The Xbox One controller is one of my favorite controllers of all time. I prefer it to the PS5 controller. I do like the trigger effects of the PS5 controller. That's really neat. But in terms of comfort and weight and all that, I am an Xbox controller person. So before we move on to the news, there was some other games that technically I did play besides Hogwarts Legacy, and that was because Steam is doing their Next Fest demo event. So I downloaded, 7 demos. I only got a chance to play 6 of them. Shadows of Doubt, I really want to play. It's like a procedurally generated detective game. I just didn't get a chance to play it. And then Tape to Tape, I only played a few minutes of. Tape to Tape does not have an option to not make the game full screen. And being on an ultra-wide monitor, it was a downgraded quality, which I couldn't get it to change, and then the picture looked distorted, and it was just very odd to play. So maybe if the demo hasn't disappeared, because sometimes the demos disappear at the event ends, and sometimes they don't, I'll play more of it. It's a roguelike hockey game, and I'm all for that. So let's start off with what I did play. Bleak Sword DX. I thought Bleak Sword DX had a super, super cool art style, and I was really enjoying it. I guess it was a iPhone arcade game. I don't have an iPhone, so I've never played any of those Apple Arcade or whatever they call it games. It has a very CRT effect. Everything is a lot of bloom on everything. It looks kind of like a diorama. One thing that I will say is that when stuff does a VHS and CRT effect, and I am somebody that creates content on YouTube when I do my longer form videos that's done in the VHS style, I don't like it when it's not a 4:3 resolution. People do it widescreen. It just kind of takes it away from it. So the effect just isn't as strong. So I think the game could have gotten maybe a little creative with their HUD placement and made it a 4:3 aspect. I don't see any reason why it couldn't have done that. And I really thought this, out of everything I played, this had the coolest visual style. I definitely urge you to check it out.
This game is what my thoughts smell like.
Yeah, that's an apt description for this game. It is bizarre. Mr. Saito, I believe is the pronunciation, was next up. This was not for me. I only ended up playing it for about 10 minutes. I did not get through the demo. It looked like one of those Game Maker games, like the RPG Maker thing. That's kind of what it reminded me of. It was getting very good reviews. Just, maybe it's for you. It just wasn't for me. Phantom Brigade, which is a tactics style game, maybe in the vein of XCOM, game-ish, I guess, maybe. It's an interesting concept. I think a certain group of strategy and tactics players will be super, super into this game. But for me, the UI was like really dated. The fog effect made everything just look kind of weird. The game just felt kind of out of date. It felt like something from 10 to 15 years ago. So it just wasn't for me. I think it's cool. I'd like to see more games like this. But just didn't end up working for me. Picayune Dreams, in the style of a Vampire Survivors. I really enjoyed this. This feels more like a traditional shmup than Vampire Survivors does. Vampire Survivors is an auto shooting, and at times auto aiming game. It's like a reverse shmup, like a reverse bullet hell, but Picayune Dreams has like the bomb system to get you out of a jam like a traditional shooter does. I do feel that there needs to be a better description of what each unlock does as you level up. And also, it's really hard to tell that you've actually killed an enemy because their blowing up animation takes so long, you don't know if you've actually killed them. And there's all these numbers on the screen, and I thought that they were just like damage numbers, like in like Diablo or World of Warcraft, where you deal damage and you see the numbers go up. That's what I thought it was. I didn't realize it was like the equivalent to like the little pellets that you have to collect in Vampire Survivors. So that was a bit, kind of threw me off. Slave 0X is the last one I will talk about. It has a really interesting art style. It's very like 90s anime, but it's very, very empty feeling. It's a beat 'em up, and the enemies take way too long to die, and the death animation is incredibly delayed, leaving you to wonder if you actually finished beating them up. I would say in a good beat 'em up game, you finish your combo cycle maybe once for lower level enemies, twice, 2.5 times for stronger enemies. That's kind of how it is for me. So this game, it just didn't really hit it. I can't imagine playing through it. It was very just repetitive, and obviously beat 'em up games at their core are kind of repetitive, but this was really just kind of like a slog. So didn't get through it, but that wraps up everything that I played over the past week, and we'll be back in just a moment with the news. Kicking things off is that Dead Island 2, a game that has been delayed and long rumored to come out, people have been waiting for it, is actually getting moved up a week. It avoids being released on the same day as Star Wars, which was recently delayed. Good for them. Dead Island 2 is a game that I think a lot of people have been really looking forward to. I remember when the first one came out, that was a really popular game. That was, a pretty big deal when it came out. I remember a lot of people playing it online, and the giant bomb streams where they were all getting online and playing it together were absolutely hilarious. It was like very much like a game of the moment. Every once in a while a game comes out, it kind of, dominates, what everybody's talking about for a brief moment in time. And I think that the first Dead Island was one of them. So yeah, for the people that were looking forward to it, hey, you get it a little bit earlier.
Didn't I make an Uwe Boll movie named Dead Island?
Honestly, you might have. That guy has adapted quite a bit of video game. Dude, you were in Alone in the Dark, which he made. That game was not great, and your movie was fucking terrible. So next up is Xbox says that Game Pass cannibalizes game sales.
This is what qualifies as news. Devs get the money up front, then they don't have to worry about game sales to make sure that their people get paid.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Christian on this one. My thoughts on this story are no shit. Game Pass is the best deal in gaming, and of course it cannibalizes game sales. However, the developer gets money up front. Now, that can work one of two ways. One, it's enough for them to pay all of their developmental costs, make some money, get started on their next game. Or two, you get all of that, and then potentially, if your game catches fire, you could have gotten a lot of sales that would have made you a lot more money. You really have to be very honest and realistic with how well your game is going to sell. I would wager before entering in an agreement to release your brand new game on release date on Game Pass. But yeah, this isn't really news. A lot of podcasts I listened to this week were spending a long time debating this topic, and it's like, why? It's one of the most obvious statements you could possibly think of in in video games. Like it was, all right, man, whatever. But moving on, PlayStation's version of Game Pass, the PlayStation Plus game catalog, is actually getting a really, really nice update starting on February 21st, which as the day after this video is coming out. So the next round of games coming to the Plus, Extra, and Premium tier, Horizon Forbidden West, one of their biggest first-party, actually I think it was their biggest first-party game of last year. The Quarry, which was one of my favorite games of the year last year, I believe it was number 2 on my list if you watched that. Resident Evil 7, Biohazard, Outriders, Scarlet Nexus, Borderlands 3, Tekken 7, Ace Combat 7, Skies Unknown, Earth Defense Force 5, Oninaki, Lost Sphere, I Am Setsuna, The Forgotten City, and Destroy All Humans, and going to their classics tier, The Legend of Dragoon, which is a very well-regarded, well-liked PS1 RPG, Wild Arms 2, and Harvest Moon Back to Nature. I think obviously the biggest thing coming out of this is getting Horizon Forbidden West, essentially a year after it came out. I mean, if that's what they're going to do, that's not a bad deal. You get the Sony first-party stuff a year after it comes out. That game ended up not reviewing as well as I think they would have hoped for, but it's certainly not a bad game. We're about to enter a little bit of a lull between like April and June, I guess, aside from Zelda, but I mean, that's a Nintendo thing. So that's a great time, pick this game up, download it, and play it. I think it's, I might check it out. I want to see what it looks like. I heard it's very visually impressive. I didn't finish the first game. There's no way on earth I'm going to finish the second game, but I'll screw around in it for a few hours. All right, after that, we have some news that ex-Apex Legends and Titanfall devs have formed Wildlight Entertainment, a new games studio. This article is coming from Video Games Chronicle. Leading the team is Chad Grenier, who was the game director of Apex Legends. He also worked on the Titanfall games and Modern Warfare. It says he's joined by multiple other former Respawn developers who have all left over the past year or so. I'm curious to see what they end up doing. Are they going to just make another first-person shooter? I think people were really hoping for a Titanfall 3, so do we see a Titanfall-like game from them, that has like the wall running and maybe even mechs, or is that maybe just going to the well and they don't want to do that and they really want to do something else? They said that they are working on a very large-scale game, but it doesn't say what it is, so for all we know, it's a fantasy RPG. You have no clue. But they are very, very talented at what they do. Apex Legends is a very well-made battle royale shooter. Titanfall 2 is one of the most well-regarded multiplayer shooters of the past 10 to 15 years. The Call of Duty games at this point, are iconic, some of the greatest first-person shooters of all time, so the pedigree is there. I would say that it would be maybe a little bit sad if they don't make a first-person shooter, because I think that there is room right now for a traditional first-person shooter multiplayer, deathmatch, capture the flag, domination-style game to take hold. All you really have is Call of Duty out there. Battlefield is constantly shooting itself in the head and just fading off into oblivion. So why not try and challenge it? Maybe take that great gameplay and just present it in a different way. If Call of Duty is going to be very grounded, make your game vertical like Titanfall. It kind of makes sense. Other studio news, Firaxis, one of my favorite studios, near and dear to my heart. Two of their big, the people that kind of defined Firaxis are gone. Jake Solomon, who is the director of Marvel's Midnight Suns, which came out last year, and the XCOM franchise is leaving Firaxis, and then kind of the big one is Steve Martin, who's the head of the studio. He's been there for 25 years, is leaving. Firaxis is... Midnight Suns, I guess, didn't do what they were hoping, and nobody really knows if that was just because of the expectations of it having a Marvel license. But the Marvel video game license is very tainted at this point. Avengers left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Guardians of the Galaxy was tremendous. One of the best games that came out that year, but it sold poorly due to people having that sour taste from the Avengers. And then the, kind of the outlier was Marvel Spider-Man and Miles Morales, which are incredible games, and in my opinion, some of the best games of however long. Spider-Man at this point is probably one of my all-time favorite games. I don't know if it quite cracks the top 10, but top 20 for sure. I love that game. That game is incredible. I can go on and on all day about that game. So Firaxis, though, for me, that's Civilization. Civilization is one of my all-time favorite franchises. I love Civilization, honestly. We just get into the next story, which is they have confirmed that they're making Civ 7. They're working on a new Civilization game. And I didn't play enough of 6. I should probably go back and play more of 6. I think I only have maybe 60 to 70 hours in 6, and that's light for a Civ game. I played a lot of 5. 4, again, like 3 was my introduction, and 3 is the one that I've played the most. I played a lot of 4, but then 5 really took hold, and then what I thought was a lot for 4 was definitely not a lot, because I played 5 to the point where I almost played 3. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of hours in Civ 5. I really, really enjoy that game. And Civ 6, I don't know, I guess it just didn't quite take hold for me, and I don't quite know why. I didn't keep up with the expansions, and maybe that was part of it. Maybe there was other stuff coming out at the time. I can't remember what year that game came out, what else came out around that time, but, you know, Civ has always been that game where, you know, I can play it, and then on the other screen, have a movie, have a TV show, listen to a podcast, just listen to music, whatever it is. That's always been that for me. I mean, the joke about the one more turn and staying up all night playing Civ, I mean, that's not a joke, because I've done it many, many times. Back when I had a lot less responsibility in my life, I was playing a lot of Civ. There was a period where in between high school and college, I was recovering from a surgery, and so I wasn't able to have a job, wasn't able to do much physically at all, in recovery, and that was played a lot of Civ during that time. A lot of like, oh, I'll do one more turn, and then it's like 4:30 in the morning, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I should actually stop. I really love that, and I hope Firaxis continues to do well. I'll be there for Civ 7 on day 1, unless they make some like drastic, bizarro change to it. I can't imagine any reason why I wouldn't check out Civ 7. And whatever those guys end up going on to do, whether they do something together, whether they get out of the industry entirely, they've put in a lot of years. I would feel bad if Martin doesn't go on to do something in video games, because man, he is responsible for, Firaxis really, I get that, the large majority of their stuff is PC only, so they don't get quite the same level of credit like a Rockstar or a BioWare, somebody like that gets, but they are one of the historically most consistent and solid and greatest developers of all time, really. They've made some amazing games, and they rarely miss, really. They kind of rarely miss. Midnight Suns was below what people's expectations was, but was it really a miss? To me, I get that there may be problems with that game, but one of the reasons that I didn't play it despite really loving Firaxis is kind of two things. One, I'm just not really interested in Marvel, and two, I was hoping it was going to be like XCOM, and it's not. So it just wasn't what I was looking for from that studio. But that doesn't mean that that's their fault. They wanted to make a different kind of game. They made 2 XCOM games. They're good. They can move on. Nobody says like, hey, you're just the XCOM and Civilization studio now. There's no reason why they have to be locked into that. So I hope that Firaxis moves on well, and I hope that the departing guys move on to cool things, and hopefully we get to play whatever they come up with. So yeah, that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this week. And, thanks again for hanging out. And, Christian, any parting words?
See you next week, turds.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. Bye.